Golf Smarter, number is 679. I want to remind you to register to win a $100 Amazon gift card courtesy of Autoslash.com. Our winners will be announced on episodes 681, 682, and 683. So register now at golfsmarter.com/autoslash. Autoslash is one word, AUTOSLASH. The secret hazard of country clubs closing. Crashing home values with Wall Street Journal reporter Candace Taylor.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Greene.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Candace.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. I am cold this morning in New York, but otherwise good.
Well, as we're recording this, this is the week that the PGA Merchandise Show happens. It is the biggest event in the golf industry on an annual basis, where all the manufacturers and all the wannabes get together and talk about the products and the industry and the state of the game and the state of instruction. It's all happening there. And your really fascinating article in the Wall Street Journal from the Mansion section on Friday, January 11th, 2019, is probably more about golf lifestyle than it is a commentary on the golf industry or golf participation.
Right. Well, golf and real estate, for better or worse, have become sort of indelibly linked in recent years. Yeah. So it's a little hard to separate them at this point.
That's very true. So let's talk about the article, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. I live next to a private country club in Northern California, but this is a golf course that, and a country club, it's more than just a course. It's got, lots of amenities, and they're going after young families, but this course was established in the 1960s. It seemed like a lot of the courses that you're talking about in the article deal with more stuff that was built after 1970 or so?
Yes. Yeah, that was really when, as I'm sure you know, that was when this huge boom happened in these golf course communities, really in the 80s and 90s and in the early 2000s.
Right.
And that's when home builders just really went for it with golf courses, and they just totally saturated the market with them, which, is, on the one hand, it's good for golfers like yourself because you now have many options.
Oh, no, I'm not a member of this course, so I can't even go out there.
But it turned out, that it has been very problematic for the housing that was built on all of these courses. And, of course, there are many, many different organizational structures. As you know from living there, some of these courses, you have to be a member to live on them, and some are just completely public. So there are, many, many different ways they're organized. But from what I'm finding, almost all of them are somewhat problematic, it turns out, when it comes to home ownership.
So nobody is going to be exempt from this issue?
Well, there certainly are golf clubs that are thriving financially, mm-hmm. And that are in, no danger of closing, will be around, have been around for 100 years, will always be around. And those are the types of clubs, the legacy clubs, the famous ones, like, how do you pronounce it? Baltusrol.
Yep, that was good.
In New Jersey.
Like that. About as close as I can get.
Those clubs are not going anywhere. The ones that have sort of the status element to them, right, and the exclusivity. People will always want to be a member of those clubs. So those, in some ways, yes, are exempt. But that's only a minority. And there are many, many other courses that have been built, like we said, in the 80s and 90s that don't have that exclusivity element. And due to a number of factors, which we'll get into, a lot of them are really facing financial hardship right now.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that kept coming across my mind is, how did you decide on this story? Was this an assignment? Did you come up with this idea? What prompted this story to be written?
Well, I just sort of stumbled across it. I was down in Charlotte working on a story about the home market there. As you might know, Charlotte is one of the most booming places in the country in terms of real estate. People are just moving there in droves because they've got a lot of jobs, and of course the weather's great and everything. And so I was writing a story about that. But as I was reporting it, I realized that a lot of the golf communities, these gated communities where the houses and the golf club are sort of intermingled, they were really having problems selling. And that struck me as very curious because Charlotte is this hot housing market with really a lot of demand. In a lot of ways, it's outperforming other housing markets across the country. And so it intrigued me that there's this one sort of segment of the housing market that's not doing well. And I started looking into it and finding a lot of these problems that as I looked into it more and more, I realized are afflicting, courses and homeowners all over the country. But that's sort of how I got into it. I started seeing that folks in some of these golf clubs were really having trouble selling their homes. And I thought, gee, if they're having this much trouble in Charlotte, then, it's got to be a problem elsewhere. And so as I began to research it, I found out that was certainly the case.
Especially in Florida, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think Florida is the worst in terms of having this problem. Arizona, California, but really almost anywhere. I mean, I wrote the story including one example from Oklahoma. It's sort of anywhere where folks live in these communities can be vulnerable.
You think it's a generational thing?
Well, the sort of decline in participation in golf has been very well documented, and
yes.
that is largely to do with just the baby boomers being the biggest generation, right? I mean, this is this huge generation, and there just aren't as many people coming up to take all of their places in golf clubs, right? So if nothing else was going on, that would be going on. But then on top of that, you have a lot of reasons that are sort of dissuading younger people from playing golf. And it's not that they don't love it or that they don't enjoy playing it. Like my husband, for example, loves playing golf.
Good.
But
have you told him about the Golf Smarter podcast yet?
I will tell him.
Thank you
but
very much.
For many of the same reasons, it's hard to go out and spend 4 hours doing anything
right.
in this day and age. And a lot of, things have changed such that people want to be with their families during that time, or they simply don't have the time for it. They feel like that's too much of a chunk out of their day, or it's too expensive. Or, they view it as something my parents did. There's a lot of reasons that not just the millennials, but, Gen X and Gen Y just aren't playing golf in the same numbers as the baby boomers. And as a result, it can be very difficult to find people who are willing to pay the membership fees for a lot of these clubs. And when that really becomes a problem is when you're in these clubs where you're required to become a member. And so when you go to sell your house, you've got to find someone who wants to be a member of this golf club. And those people are fewer and fewer and harder to find.
Right. And so, again, it comes back to being a lifestyle thing. I think that, you talk about it's so long to get out there and do it. But when I watch young people play golf, and I have a son in his 30s who plays golf, he's never detached from his world. He's on his phone the entire time.
It's not against the rules?
No. Well, maybe on some private courses they allow smoking cigars, but they don't allow to have your phone. But it's not like he's talking on the phone. He's on Twitter. He's checking news headlines. He's just checking his email to make sure he doesn't have to respond to a client because, we're never away anymore. You can't,
right.
It always cracks me up when people say, "Hi, I can't get to my phone right now. Please leave a message." It's like, what do you mean you can't get to your phone? It's in your pocket.
Right.
Just tell me you don't have the money. I'll just say leave a message and I'll get back to you. But don't tell me that you can't get to your phone.
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, and that's exactly part of the problem is we're expected to be always on call. And I think that's part of why it's more difficult to take a few hours and just go and disconnect. It's much harder to do that.
But that's what I'm saying is they're not disconnecting. You know, they're playing music on, through Bluetooth, and they have speakers in their bags, and they're out there. They're out there. But I think that the lifestyle of living on a golf course, it may be a tough sell to your partner sometimes, no matter how much you love golf. And
yes.
So the numbers are actually staggering. Can you rattle off some numbers of what's been happening with the golf real estate industry?
With the industry, well, as you know, more than 200 golf courses closed in 2017.
Ouch.
Only about 15 new ones opened. And every time one of these golf courses closes, the prices for the nearby homes fall about 25%, just the moment it closes. And then if they get into a big legal battle, which they almost always do, prices can fall 40 or 50% on homes. Now, those prices will eventually come back depending on what happens and what they end up doing with the course. But, that's a pretty big hit. And, it leads to a lot of litigation on a number of levels because, and then, of course, people just like living on a golf course and don't want their course to close. But a lot of times these are just financially unsustainable. In part because there are so many of them that, it's just hard to attract the sheer numbers of people that you need to keep. It's expensive to run a golf course.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, people don't want that to be part of their homeowners' fees. That's another problem.
Yeah. I mean, you cited some cases of courses closing and then people saying, well, I'm not going to pay my dues anymore. Right, but they're part of it's part of the homeowners, and it's part of their fees for living there, and it's ended up in litigation.
Yes, apparently the vast majority of these things do end up in court. I mean, there are times when it can sort of be worked out amicably, but almost never because it just becomes a very, very emotional issue for people. In addition to the financial element of it, of course, people are worried about their home values. A lot of times before a course closes, the services sort of dwindle and they, if they're having financial difficulty, they stop taking good care of the course. And that leads people to be unhappy. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm not paying my dues because you're not taking care of the course. And it becomes sort of a standoff where everyone's unhappy. And then, there are a lot of times when a course will close and then the homeowners will sue the owner saying, I bought here, believing there was always going to be a golf club here. And how can you close this course? This is, there have been cases where they claim that it's false advertising. There are all kinds of different legal battles that have cropped up, and they're all, all of these golf courses have very different structures, ownership structures. So how it turns out is, there's just a vast array of different ways that can work out.
Have you seen cases that would tend to go to the corporate side in some states versus the resident side in other states? Have you seen anything as far as geographically how these suits end up?
Yeah.
Really?
A lot of it is to do with sort of like the state and local ordinances, sometimes, and like how these courses are zoned. And, there are places where, there are things in the documents that say this has to be a golf course, in which case, the residents will win and they can't make it not a golf course. But if that's not, in the law or it's not in the zoning, or, it's not in writing somewhere, then it'll go the other way. There are cases where, a private owner has wanted to close a golf course and the residents have, just really rejected that idea, and municipalities have bought golf courses. I believe that happened in Phoenix. So that has happened, but that's rare too, because, again, it's expensive to run a golf course. And so for a town or city to take that on, it's difficult to have the finances to do that. I did speak to one group I believe they're in Georgia, where the homeowners actually did buy the golf course, from,
Really?
I guess it was the club that owned it. Yep. And they've had to get out there like with, weeding themselves and with tractors and everything. And they've made it work.
Yeah, but that can't sustain itself because people are going to pass on and people are going to move in and not going to want to do that work.
It's sure not easy.
No.
It's not an easy way to go, for sure. So they're sort of unique in that they were willing to get out there and, physically work on the golf course themselves. But that is very rare.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you're going through some of this, it's highly individual which way it's going to go. It's not, it's not always going to go to the owner's side or to the homeowner's side. It definitely depends on the individual circumstances.
Let's take a quick time out, and we'll be right back after this. So we're giving away 3 $100 Amazon gift cards courtesy of Autoslash.com. Well, to win, register at golfsmarter.com/autoslash. But let me tell you about Autoslash because I'm actually enjoying my dealings with the service a lot. If you have to pay to rent a car when traveling, I say that because you may get to expense it, which is awesome, but not all of us have that luxury. But if you do rent cars, you may not realize that the prices fluctuate from one company to the next, and usually as you get closer to your travel date, the price is much lower than when you started. That's where Autoslash comes in. Now, I'm going to San Antonio later this month for my annual buddy golf trip. Oh, if you have any recommendations on courses you think that I should be setting up to play there, please let me know. Anyway, I booked a minivan for us from a major car rental company. I'm not sure if I can say which one, but once I registered the car, then I entered the info at autoslash.com, and now they are doing the tracking of the pricing on that vehicle from every company out there. They apply every coupon code you're eligible for, including publicly available codes and membership codes like Costco or AAA, frequent flyer programs, and even credit card coupons. You just let them know in the initial sign-up, and they'll continue to track the price of the car you selected or comparable cars to get you the best price. Almost on a daily basis, you'll get emails letting you know about lower prices they've found for your car. But it's up to you to make that change. So you're not obligated to do this daily. But when you're ready, just cancel your initial booking and rebook the car with the lower price. The algorithms they created for this price tracker thing is what makes Autoslash magical. Can I use that word? It's amazing. But you don't have to pay for the R&D on that because this service is completely free. Now, let me repeat that because when we hear about new services provided on the web, we always go, okay, so what's the catch? Yeah, there is none. Autoslash is completely free, and the average user saves up to 30% off the rate they can find on any other car rental site. So trust me on this one. Next time you plan to rent a car for any reason, find and book a car from the company you want, then log in to autoslash.com. That's AUTOSLASH, one word, autoslash.com, and let them do the work to find better rates for you. When they have a better rate, they'll email you so that you can rebook and save. Again, that's autoslash.com, who's generously providing us with these $100 Amazon gift cards that we're giving away to you. Register to win at golfsmarter.com/autoslash. But to get the best prices on your next car rental, go to autoslash.com. I just can't imagine that somebody would who's been looking forward to retirement and moving and downsizing or upsizing to a place where they can entertain more. But to be able to move onto the home that you've been building towards for 20, 30, 40 years, with views of this beautiful golf course that has a lake and a fountain and alligators and all these things. And then all of a sudden, it's not a golf course anymore. And then it's not
absolutely.
being maintained. And now all of a sudden, are there instances where they sell that land and someone else starts building other homes on it? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're describing is exactly right. It's crushing for people. It's very emotional because, like you said, this is their dream home.
Yeah.
This is what they've been working all their lives to save for. And so for all of a sudden, for the golf course to just close. And often there's not any warning either, depending on, who owns the course. I interviewed some people who were shocked. They had no idea the course was about to close. And then, all of a sudden there's just a sign on the door saying it's closed. It's really, not only is it emotional for people, but it hits them in the pocketbook as well, because then they can't sell their house. So it's really a perfect storm.
Yeah.
For a lot of folks.
And the values, it's really amazing how low the value drops or how much the value of your home can drop. And you're really losing so much of everything you've built up for. I mean, you were commenting in the story of some, and I'll put a link to it. Hopefully it'll work in today's show notes. I don't know if you have to be a member, you have to join Wall Street Journal to read this or not. A friend of mine just met me on the golf course and goes, "Here, you got to read this." It's like, oh my God, I got to contact her. This is amazing.
The print paper, good. I'm glad someone's reading it.
Oh yeah. Well, again, we talk about the boomers, right? Some of them are still reading actual paper. But what kind of factors, what kind of recourse do homeowners have? When this goes on, what are the plans of action for them to do?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Once you've bought a home on a course that's having financial difficulties, you're not going to have a lot of good options. Any option is going to be expensive and difficult and involve lawsuits. So really the best thing you can be doing is to avoid getting yourself into this situation in the first place. And I think that is a very important thing that I want people to be aware of, right? Because a lot of times people think that buying a house on a golf course is going to guarantee your home values, right? Or boost your home values, when in fact it can be the opposite. And so it's very important that people do their due diligence when they're considering buying a home on the course. Like I was telling you earlier, there absolutely are courses that are financially healthy that are not going anywhere. That is absolutely the case. You just have to, be very careful and ask all the questions. What is the financial health of the club? What are the assessments? How often did the dues increase? And, I've heard people tell me about their dues increase every year. An important thing to ask about is what they call a resign list. Is there a list of people who are waiting to get out of the club? That can happen sometimes, where they won't let you leave until they find someone to replace you. And so people have been on these lists for years and years.
Sure.
And during this time, you have to still be paying your dues. So that can be really awful as well. So definitely ask about that if you're considering.
One of the things that I love about podcasting is that somebody can go, these are, if you're at all considering going into this situation, this is where you pause it, go back a little bit and go, wait, I need to write that question down. If I'm going to do this, what other questions should they be asking?
Yes. So that's the most important one. What are the finances? What is the resignation policy? Is there a resign list? If I want to leave, what is the procedure? Another important thing to ask about is something called mandatory membership, which is a policy that if you buy a house in the golf community, you have to be a member of the golf club. And this has been a big issue. It sounds in theory like it's a good idea, right? Because it helps, make sure that there's enough funds in place to keep the golf club running. But what they've found in reality is that mandatory membership can be absolutely disastrous for the home values, because it's so hard now to find people who are willing to be members of a golf club. So if that's a requirement of selling your house, it can be virtually impossible to find a buyer in some of these places. So I would stay away from anything that has mandatory membership. And I know that sounds like a strong statement, but they've done a fair amount of research on this now in Florida, in other places. And it's been found to really be problematic on a lot of levels. And if you look on Zillow, you'll see homes that seem like they should be, perfectly nice homes that seem like they should be priced $200,000, $300,000, and you'll see they're priced at like 50. And you go and look, and it's because of this mandatory membership thing, which has different names, by the way. But anything where that's the idea, that you have to be a member of this club in order to live in the community, I would stay away from that.
Right. You had a case study in there about an apartment building, or I guess it's a condo, a 10-story building in Boca Raton. And that after 3 years of opening up on a high-end golf course, they were still only at 60% capacity, right?
Yes, which, to be fair, the housing market in Florida right now is not great. So, I mean, there are factors like that as well. But yeah, there are still places that have mandatory membership, and this is one of them. And I mean, the owner pointed out, okay, if you're a billionaire, I guess you don't really care if you're gonna lose value on your home when you sell.
On that home, but you have 3 or 4 others.
And maybe you do, right? And that is one thing that I ran into reporting this story. I mean, some people truly just, I guess, have so much money that they don't care about losing on their resale value. But I think that the most of us, no matter how well off we are or not, don't like to lose money.
Right.
I think that people should be informed.
Well, you're a reporter. Of course you feel that way.
But it's an area where people's perceptions seem very different from the reality.
Yeah.
And, that was the concern. And, the good thing is there's so many golf courses nowadays, right? There's no shortage of golf. Golf is not going away.
No.
And so folks, like, especially if you live in the Charlotte area, for example, there's tons of golf clubs you could potentially join. There's this club, I think it's called Carmel. They are thriving and booming, and you can buy homes next to the golf club. You just don't have to be a member to live there. And in a lot of ways, that can be the best solution.
Do they ever? Well, I've played on golf courses that are next to, I don't even want to say semi-private courses, but just public courses. Do they have the same kind of issues?
Absolutely.
Really? So public courses with home developments around it struggle as well?
Yeah, and merely because of the demographics that we talked about.
Right.
I mean, it's the same everywhere. There are just too many golf courses in the marketplace for the number of golfers. That's really the case everywhere, except for, like we said, the super high status places. Those are really the only ones that aren't suffering from that. And that's a whole different thing to worry about, right? If you live on a public golf course, you got to worry that golf course is going to close because of financial difficulties. And that has happened, and that happened to folks that I wrote about in the story. And, once that happens, you don't know what's going to result. A lot of times housing is built on these on this land because, that's what we need a lot of these days. We need more housing. Some folks build what they call an agri-hood, which is not a golf course, a housing development built around some kind of farming. That's popular now. But still, nobody likes to have their beautiful view, replaced with another house. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
And so, anytime you're buying a home on a golf course, you just have to be so careful because in most cases, there's not a guarantee that it's always going to be a golf course, whether it's private, public, whatever it is.
I'm so glad that you brought up the agri-hood because I had it in my notes to ask you what it was, and I just couldn't figure out where to put it in. So thank you for answering that question.
No problem.
That was very good.
Agri-hood, it's very popular right now because, people
Sure.
a lot of times it'll be wine, vineyards.
Sure.
I think one guy I spoke to was doing like a butterfly farm or, people love this whole farm to table concept now.
Exactly.
So,
and there's the farm right out our window. Right, exactly.
Right. Right. So that's popular now. Golf courses can be converted into parkland. It's just often financially very difficult because whoever owns the course wants to get paid.
Yeah.
And then you have the question of like chemical, what chemicals have they used in the grass and all of that stuff doesn't always make it fit to be a public, to be a wildlife habitat.
Yeah, we're having an issue here in Northern California in Marin County. There's a golf course that I did a story on a couple of years ago because of the family that took over. But they have now, they were trying to sell it and they couldn't get a buyer. This is a really nice course. It's not easy to get to and there's no driving range. So there are things that go against it, but the locals love this course. And so the public, the land trust purchased it and was going to keep it open as a golf course, and they did for 6 months, although they said they were going to do it for 2 years, and they shut it down again. And now it's in battles about should it be parkland, should it, and I don't know how familiar you are with Marin County, but it's really wide open with a lot of open space and doesn't need more. It needs housing and it needs affordable housing, but this is a NIMBY community, and they won't do that. And so we're having that trouble with, what do we do with this golf course that's sitting out there, and how do we maintain it? Very difficult.
And it's something that a lot of communities are going through right now. We're only from my reporting, we're only about halfway through the number of golf courses that are going to need to close. And each one of those, it's going to be like you described, the community sort of going through this, it's trauma is what it is of a golf course closing and being replaced with whatever it's going to ultimately be replaced with. I mean, a lot of it is going to be more housing. And, as much as locals don't want that, it's what it's going to end up being. So it's just, it's a tough problem. I mean, one thing that's been happening that is positive is that there are these companies that come in and buy golf courses and run a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
So that is one way. You asked what can people do. That's actually a way to consider saving a golf course. These operators that own, a bunch of these clubs and they have economies of scale, right? So if they own 20 clubs, it's much cheaper for them to, mow the grass or whatever it is.
Right.
And they can do it a lot more efficiently. And it's just, it's not a private country club anymore, Right. And so for people who prefer a private country club, that can be disappointing, but that is a way of having a golf course survive.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen more and more. More and more of these private clubs are going to get bought up by those groups.
Or management groups. Troon is a good example of a company that manages a has a large portfolio, including the one that I live next to, of courses that they manage, not necessarily own. They do own some, but they manage a lot. Boy, you are good, Candace, because another one of the questions that I had here was, what recourse does a developer have when properties
Yeah.
close, and you already answered that question, so I won't even ask that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, though, after you've done all this research and reporting on a story that seems like it was out of your wheelhouse, although you seem like to be you're a real estate reporter, not necessarily golf.
Exactly. I'm a real estate reporter, not a golf reporter. So.
Right.
but
so
now
thank
I
you
know
for
all this
sharing
about
with
golf.
us. Yeah, right. So if you can you editorialize on what you believe this story to be about? I mean, like editorialize on this. Tell me what you think, not necessarily what you're reporting on. How does
What
that
do
come
I
out?
think this story is really about?
Yeah, and where it's headed. So if somebody were to ask you for advice, so what should I do?
Oh,
That's
well,
easy.
my advice would be, my advice purely financially would be never buy a home on a golf course unless it's one of those that we talked about, really, really special legacy clubs that aren't going anywhere, like Pebble Beach, like those. But of course, there's other reasons people buy homes on golf courses, right? It's emotional, or it's their dream home, or
Right.
that's just all they want in life. So, there's other things that go into it other than pure finances. But, from a financial perspective, that's what I would say. I absolutely recognize that there are great things about these communities, and the people who live in them love them. I believe that a lot of the clubs that are out there that are having trouble will be able to work through it. And, you need good governance for that. And I would recommend those clubs to get advice, get sound advice. One thing that clubs can do is invest in their infrastructure, right? Because you had mentioned how it's important to get families involved in golf. And that's important. And also, to have a really nice pool and a really nice restaurant. Like, there are reasons that people love these communities that aren't just golf. A lot of times they love the social aspect of it. So it sounds counterintuitive, but if you invest in your club, the infrastructure, if you make it a really great pool or a really great restaurant that people actually want to come to that actually has good food, then that's going to draw members. And a lot of clubs have had success with that. So that is a good way to go. And there are, consultants that assist with that kind of thing that help clubs do that. And so that's another thing that folks can do. So if you already live in a golf course, on a golf course, then that is something I would consider, is spending on your infrastructure to draw younger people. And draw people who want to go to the pool and all of that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff I think that the golf industry needs to do, but that's more your territory than mine.
No.
I know there's a lot of discussion about, well, can we play music on the golf course?
Right.
Can we wear jeans? All of that stuff.
Right.
Which that's sort of a separate topic.
Right, but it's still back into lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's part of the lifestyle aspect of golf that gets caught between two worlds, I think. At the very least, two worlds.
There's the folks who want it to be how it's always been, and then there's, the younger people who are needed to keep the sport financially viable, but they're like, what? I have to wear a collared shirt?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's not the people who want it to be the way it was. It's the USGA and everybody else. Oh, did I just say that? Okay. So, well, Candace.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I just made that up. So thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on a great story that is obviously people are writing to you and they're writing to me saying, have you seen this? It's just a great topic. It's timely, obviously. So thank you again for agreeing to talk to me, and thank your superiors for allowing you to talk to me about this.
I will pass that on. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm happy to report that I have safely returned from 2 amazing weeks in Uganda and actually saw 2 golf courses while I was there. One was a beautiful layout that I saw from the new expressway near the airport in Entebbe. But we traveled through a lot of the country, like all the way down the western border and then southern border, then out to the east. And so the first one that I saw was on the eastern side of the country at Mount Elgon in Mbale, just behind the Mount Elgon Hotel, which is where we stayed at the end of our trip. And I had just finished a morning swim, the only one I got to do in the trip, and was looking past this barbed wire fence at this large open space that had goats and cows grazing and people walking through on their way to work and school. And then I noticed this one guy carrying a golf bag. So I asked the attendant at the pool, "Hey, is there a golf course near here?" And he said, "That is the golf course." Anyway, I posted a short video on that experience on the YouTube Golf Smarter TV channel. It's short, but you'll get to see what I'm talking about. And I finished the story about that lone golfer, which is kind of silly. So if you want a better look at that and what I was talking about, check it out at golfsmarter.com, or please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Golf Smarter TV, youtube.com/golfsmartertv. On the episodes that I published before I left, I invited you to follow our adventure on Instagram or Facebook. I'm sorry, that didn't work out. So if you tried, so there was a couple of reasons why it didn't happen. First of all, our days were very long and very arduous, difficult, and exhausting. And when we stopped at a lodge or where we were staying, if there was electricity, then it was probably inconsistent, and we kept the nicest hotels. We had power outages and water heaters blow, and the Wi-Fi was extremely weak and difficult to do anything other than maybe text our kids, who it was 12 hours, so they were in the middle of the night for them, so really didn't get to communicate with home at all. Also, even though I took an average of 500 photos a day, it was on my DSLR, not my phone, so it made it very difficult to just go ahead and post things online. Well, now I'm holding back because I have 500 gigabytes of video and 7,200 photos we're wading through, and we're trying to put little pieces together. I just slapped that golf video together just so you can see it. And I've been showing people like some of the best of the photos, and they're like, "Are you going to do an exhibit on this? Or are you entering in contests? Like, that shot is unbelievable." Wow, thank you. So if you'd like to ask me some questions or interested in an adventure like this one into Uganda, let me know and I'll be happy to share it with you. And if you've ever considered doing this and having a chimpanzee habituation experience or trekking with mountain gorillas, I swear to you, this is what we did. I have a great recommendation of who to book your travel with, because it's a local Uganda company and they're great to deal with and take care of every one of your needs. Our driver was remarkable. And he just was watching out for us morning, noon, and night. And he was a great guy, and we actually fell in love with him. So that was a great trip. But not surprising, while I was gone, the responses to the re-release of both Tony Manzoni's book and DVD have been excellent. Thank you so much. Once again, I'll leave the link in today's show notes so that you can purchase the book on Amazon. Or if you're on Amazon, just search for Tony Manzoni while you're there. Again, the book is called The Lost Fundamental: One Simple Move, Better Golf Forever. And it's available in Kindle format for only $6.99 or paperback for $9.99. Now, if you bought one of the original copies that we talked about years ago and with Tony, the book was in the 20s because he printed them. So we're saving a lot of money, and the money is going back into the writers getting some and the families getting some. So thanks for that. And now the DVD is out of print. There are no left. But if you are interested in purchasing that video, send me an email and we'll communicate on what you can do for that. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, follow me on Instagram. I may be there on Facebook or Twitter at Golf Smarter. Or if you want to talk to me directly, click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.